One evening, I received a provocative photo from someone I never expected, my best friend's mom. What on earth happened? Let me tell you. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into a story where the main character finds himself at a crossroads in an unexpected and emotionally intense situation. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to make a difficult decision, choosing between what your heart wants and what's right? Or perhaps you felt torn between loyalty and boundaries? Please help me reach 1,000 subscribers. It would mean the world and motivate me to bring more great stories to you in the future. It was one of those lazy Thursday afternoons when everything felt comfortably normal. The kind of day where time seemed to slow down, and there wasn't much going on. I had just finished work, grabbed a quick bite to eat, and settled onto the couch, scrolling through my phone as the sun began to dip behind the city skyline. The golden hues of the sunset illuminated the windows, casting long shadows across the room. The city's usual hum was distant and soft, almost peaceful, and I figured it would be just another uneventful evening. My mind wandered as I flicked through my social media feeds, looking at random updates, half reading the comments, trying to push away the stress from the workday. Life had been a little too busy lately, so I relished moments like this, where I could just take a breath and relax. The air outside was cool, with just a hint of evening chill. And I felt an easy peace wash over me as I sat there, letting the rhythm of the city's fading noise lull me into a comfortable daze. But then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling me out of my thoughts. The sound was sharp, unexpected in the stillness of the room. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was just a notification about some app update or a group chat I had muted. But after a few seconds, curiosity got the better of me, and I reached for my phone. The name on the screen made me stop cold. Emma. Emma. I blinked, confused for a moment. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, maybe even months. She was Noah's mom. And Noah, my best friend since childhood, had been living overseas for the past year, chasing his dream of a career in Europe. His absence left a hole in all of our lives, especially Emma's. The relationship between me and his mom had always been cordial but distant. We'd exchanged pleasantries over the years, especially when I helped Noah with errands or fixed things around the house when he wasn't around. Sometimes I'd catch up with Emma when Noah was busy or traveling, but we were never close. Noah's mom was a nice woman, caring, a little reserved at times, but strong. She had raised Noah on her own after his father left when Noah was young. I knew she had a soft spot for him, but lately, I couldn't help but feel that she had been a little lost. Her routine seemed off without Noah around. You could tell that something had changed for her, especially now that the house felt emptier. I often found myself checking in on her from time to time, just to make sure she was doing okay, but even those moments felt awkward. I didn't know how to help her, or even if she wanted help. So when I saw her name flash across my phone screen, I assumed she needed something again, another little favor, or maybe she was just checking in to see how I was doing. She had been through a lot on her own lately, and I was more than happy to offer assistance if she needed it. I had always tried to be there for her, but Noah was my first priority. And I'd never really given much thought to the space Emma took up in my life. I opened the message, expecting to read something simple, like, "Could you pick up some groceries for me?" Or maybe, "Do you have time to come fix the leaky faucet again?" But what I found when I opened it was nothing I could have predicted. It wasn't a simple request for help. It wasn't a casual, "Hey, how's it going?" or even a generic, "I hope you're doing well." Instead, attached to the message was a photo. I stared at the photo for what felt like an eternity. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. The image wasn't explicit in any way, no, it wasn't that kind of photo, but it was definitely private. It was something far too personal for me to have ever seen. Especially considering the sender was Noah's mom. I could feel my pulse quicken as my heart rate picked up. The picture was simple. Yet it felt like 1,000 unspoken words were coming through in the image. She looked almost vulnerable. It wasn't a seductive photo, not overtly intimate. But it was intimate in a way that sent a shockwave through me. My first instinct was to immediately close it and pretend I hadn't seen anything. It had to be a mistake, right? Maybe she sent it to the wrong person. She probably meant to send it to someone else, I convinced myself. But as I sat there, staring at the phone screen, something about it didn't sit right with me. It didn't feel like a mistake. Why would she send me something like this? Questions started swirling in my mind, none of them making any sense. Could it be that Emma was trying to flirt with me? No. That couldn't be it. That seemed absurd. She was Noah's mom, for God's sake. She had always treated me like a son, and I had always respected her as a friend of my family. But as much as I tried to dismiss the thought, the feeling of something being off only grew stronger. I took a deep breath and put the phone down, hoping the moment would pass. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that I was just misinterpreting the situation. Maybe it was just an accident, a weird mistake. I was being too sensitive, right? But the more I tried to shake it off, the more the image kept resurfacing in my mind. It lingered there, like a nagging feeling I couldn't escape. I told myself it was probably nothing, a weird mistake, a one-off, maybe even a joke. But the thought didn't sit right with me. Deep down, I knew I wasn't done thinking about it. I kept replaying the image in my head. I couldn't help it. That was the first moment I realized that this wasn't going to be the last time I'd be confronted with this strange, uncomfortable situation. As I tried to go about my evening, I felt a strange sense of unease settle over me. I couldn't get the image out of my mind. It wasn't just the photo itself, it was the realization that somehow Emma had chosen me to receive it. Why me? What did that mean? The more I pondered it, the more confused I became. What was I supposed to do about it? Should I just ignore it? Pretend it never happened? Or was this a sign that something was changing between us? Maybe Emma was reaching out, trying to fill the emptiness in her life. Maybe this was just a way of testing the waters. Whatever it was, I knew I had to confront it. I told myself that maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just an accident. Or a mistake that would be forgotten in a day. But deep inside, something told me that this wasn't the last time I'd be thinking about it. I knew it. This wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, I woke up with a tight knot in my chest. It wasn't the start of a fresh day, I could still feel the weight of yesterday's events pressing down on me, like a shadow that refused to lift. I had a busy day ahead, calls to make, work to finish, but my mind kept circling back to that one thing, the message from Emma. Why had she sent it to me? Was it some kind of joke, some test? Or was she trying to get attention in a way I never would have imagined from her? I felt a wave of guilt wash over me just thinking that. I had known Emma for years. Always with respect and admiration. She'd been nothing but kind to me, and I had done so much for her over the years, especially when Noah wasn't around to help. Yet now, everything felt like it was shifting, like the ground beneath me was beginning to crack. The way she'd reached out to me with that photo, the intimacy of it, the vulnerability, it didn't make sense. Why me? Of all people, why me? As I sat down for my coffee, trying to shake off the lingering confusion, my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't want to look at it. But there it was, the same name. Emma. I hesitated for a long moment, staring at the screen. What if it was just a follow-up message? Something simple, like, "Did you get the photo?" or, "I hope you weren't too shocked." The kind of message where she'd just brush it off as no big deal. Or, worse still, what if she sent another one? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I shouldn't have been this nervous. It was just a message, right? But my thumb hovered over the screen, my mind racing through 1,000 possibilities. Was I making a mountain out of a molehill? Or was I genuinely stepping into something more complicated than I could understand? Finally, I clicked on the message, and when I saw the words, my heart sank. The simplicity of them hit me harder than I expected. Did you like the photo? The words felt like a punch to the stomach. I froze for a few seconds, not sure how to process what I was reading. This wasn't just an innocent question anymore. It wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. She was asking me, of all people, if I liked the photo. She knew it was personal. She knew what it meant. And she was putting the ball in my court. I quickly scanned the message again, almost hoping I had read it wrong, that maybe there was some context I had missed. But there was no mistaking her intentions now. It was clear. I stared at the screen, barely blinking, as if somehow, looking at it longer would change its meaning. My mind was spinning. I didn't know what to do, or how to respond. My brain was screaming at me to just block her, to walk away and pretend this never happened. To pretend that this was some kind of mistake. An anomaly in an otherwise normal relationship. But the message, the weight of it, wouldn't let go. It was pulling me in, like a magnetic force I couldn't escape. Why had she sent me a picture like this? What did it mean? Was this a cry for help, an attempt to fill an emotional gap she felt since Noah left? Or was there something else she wasn't saying? Something beneath the surface that I wasn't seeing? The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was tangled in a web I didn't understand. I needed to make sense of this. I had to. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and finally typed out a response. It wasn't much, but it was the best I could come up with at the moment. Yeah, it was nice. Unexpected, but nice. The words felt weak as I typed them, almost like I was brushing off the weight of the situation. But I didn't know how else to respond. What was I supposed to say? Was I supposed to confront her? Should I ask what she really meant? Should I just ignore it and pretend I hadn't seen the photo at all? Or was I supposed to delve into this mess headfirst, risking everything? Before I could overthink it too much, the reply came swiftly. Good. Would you be willing to come over today? I could really use some help around the house. I paused. Help? Now? After everything? The words on the screen felt like they were stabbing at me, one after another. This wasn't just a casual request anymore. It wasn't just a, hey, can you help me with some groceries? This was something else. This was an invitation, an opening, a way for her to pull me closer. I hesitated, my gut instinct telling me to walk away, to turn the phone off. And pretend this was all some mistake that would be forgotten with time. But I couldn't. I couldn't just ignore it. Curiosity got the best of me. I needed to know what was going on. I couldn't rest until I understood. What was she really asking? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, but in the end, I typed back. Sure, I'll be there in an hour. As soon as I hit send, I regretted it. What the hell was I doing? I felt a wave of panic wash over me. Like I had just stepped off a cliff without knowing what was at the bottom. Why did I agree to this? What had just happened? I had gone from trying to ignore the situation to diving headfirst into it. And now I was on my way to her house. I tried to convince myself that I was just going to help her with something small. Something that would let me walk away from this whole mess without diving deeper. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be that simple. The tension was already in the air. And whatever I walked into next would change everything. As I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door, I felt a mixture of nervousness and guilt gnawing at me. What was I getting myself into? What did Emma want from me? And most importantly, what was I going to do when I got there? By the time I arrived at Emma's house, my nerves were completely shot. I didn't know what I was walking into. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just crossed some invisible line, a line I didn't even know existed until now. What was this really? Was this some kind of weird emotional breakdown? Or had I just let my mind run wild? Had I been overthinking everything, or had Emma just dragged me into something deeper than I was ready for? I pulled up to her house. The familiar view of the front porch now feeling strangely unfamiliar, as though the space between us had suddenly grown larger. I wasn't even sure what I expected when I knocked on her door. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. I knocked, my heart pounding in my chest like a drumbeat I couldn't ignore. The quietness around me seemed oppressive, almost suffocating. The house had always been a place full of life, filled with Noah's energy, his jokes, his presence. Now, the air felt heavy, almost hollow. It was as though the house itself was mourning the absence of the one person who had once brought light and warmth into it. When the door creaked open, I was met with Emma standing in the doorway. Her features soft, her smile gentle, but there was something else in her eyes. Something different. It wasn't the warmth I had always associated with her, something was off. Maybe it was the way her shoulders were slumped slightly or how her eyes, usually bright, were clouded with something I couldn't place. Sadness? Hesitation? "Hey, thanks for coming," she said. Her voice lacking its usual cheer. She stepped aside to let me in, and as I crossed the threshold, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was entering a place I didn't quite belong anymore. The silence in the house was deafening. The walls, once filled with the laughter and banter of Noah and Emma, now felt empty, as if they too were grieving the absence of his presence. There was no music playing, no sounds of someone bustling about. Just the heavy, still air that seemed to settle over us as we walked deeper into the house. As we reached the living room, I could feel the tension between us. It was palpable, like a thick fog that neither of us could quite see through. Emma motioned for me to sit, and I took a seat on the couch, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. The room felt too quiet, and I realized with a start that I hadn't heard her speak since I entered. Emma sat down beside me, but not too close. She avoided looking directly at me, instead focusing on her hands. She was fidgeting with them in her lap, a subtle but telling sign of the discomfort that was clearly growing in her. I could tell she was waiting for me to say something, but for the life of me, I couldn't think of what to say. What do you say when someone you've known for years suddenly seems like a stranger? What do you say when someone reaches out in a way that feels too personal, too intimate, and you don't know if you're even allowed to acknowledge it? We sat in awkward silence for a few moments. And I could feel the weight of her gaze on me, though she hadn't looked me in the eyes once since I'd entered. It was as if she was waiting for me to make the first move, to break the tension. I could almost hear the thoughts running through her head. What is he thinking? Does he feel the same way I do? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emma spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried with it a sense of vulnerability I hadn't expected. "So, did you like the pictures?" I froze. My mind couldn't process the question at first. I had been bracing myself for something, but I wasn't sure what. I knew we couldn't avoid the topic forever, but when it finally came, it hit me harder than I imagined it would. Her words lingered in the air, and in that moment, I understood that this wasn't just about the photos. It wasn't about some casual flirtation or some mistake I could chalk up to confusion. No. This was deeper. Emma wasn't just asking if I liked the photos, she was asking if I understood. She was asking if I saw something in her that wasn't just the mother of my best friend. Something beyond the roles we had always played in each other's lives. I opened my mouth, but no words came out at first. My stomach tightened, my thoughts swirling in a haze. I felt like I was on the verge of saying something that would change everything, something that would push us into a territory that I wasn't ready to cross. I stammered. My voice barely audible. It was unexpected. But I wasn't uncomfortable. Just different. Emma nodded slowly, her lips pressing together as though she was processing my words. She let out a long sigh, and I could see the weight of her emotions finally breaking through. She wasn't just hiding behind a smile anymore, she was allowing herself to be vulnerable. I didn't mean to make things weird, she said quietly, almost apologetically. I've been feeling so alone, you know? Noah's been gone for months now. And I feel like I'm just stuck in this rut. I don't know how to get out of it. I just want to feel seen again. Her words hit me like a freight train. They weren't just a casual statement, they were an admission of need, of a raw, aching desire to be recognized, to be heard. She wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't trying to make me feel sorry for her. She was just telling the truth. She was lonely. This wasn't about me or the photo. It wasn't some accidental or fleeting moment of weakness. This was real. Emma was reaching out. And I had no idea how to respond. She had made herself vulnerable, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. I wanted to help, I wanted to console her, but was I crossing a line? Was this the moment where I would blur the boundary between being a good friend and something else entirely? The silence hung between us like a heavy curtain. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, trying to figure out the right thing to do. Part of me wanted to wrap my arms around her, tell her everything would be okay, that I would always be there for her. But another part of me, the more rational part, was screaming that I needed to set boundaries, that I couldn't let this moment lead to something I might regret. I know it's hard, I finally said. My voice barely above a whisper. I can't imagine how lonely you must feel. But I don't know if I'm the one who can fill that void for you. Emma's eyes fell to her lap, her fingers still fidgeting. But she nodded slowly. The tension between us didn't disappear, but I knew in that moment that I had made a choice. I had acknowledged her feelings without crossing a line. I had chosen to respect the boundaries that we both needed to maintain. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I didn't mean to make this difficult. I don't know what else to do." I sat there for a moment, unsure of where to go next. I had offered her comfort, but in doing so, I had also set a limit. We could still be friends. But there had to be boundaries. Emma wasn't just looking for someone to fill the void, she was searching for herself, for something deeper than I could offer. And I had to respect that. The room felt quieter now, but not in the same suffocating way it had earlier. There was a sense of mutual understanding, even if we both knew things would never be quite the same. It was hard to ignore the desire to console her. Emma wasn't just a stranger, she was Noah's mom. I had known her for years, and she had always treated me like family. But now, seeing her like this, so vulnerable, so raw, was gut-wrenching. Her sadness, her fragility, seemed to seep into the very air around us, making it harder to breathe. I had never seen Emma like this before. She was always the strong one, the one who held everything together when Noah was growing up. But now, she seemed like a shell of that person. I could feel the pull, her need for comfort, her need for someone to be there for her. It was a primal urge to reach out, to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't let myself do that. I couldn't let myself get too close. I had to remind myself of the boundaries I had set, the line that couldn't be crossed. Emma was in a fragile state. And I couldn't be the emotional outlet she was seeking. I had to be strong for both of us, even if it meant turning away from what felt like an obvious need. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. If I gave in, if I let my emotions drive me into something more intimate, then what would it mean for our relationship? Would I be taking advantage of her vulnerability? Or worse? Would I be opening myself up to something that could destroy the trust one had built with Noah? Emma, I said softly, my voice steady but filled with compassion, I get it. I really do. But I can't be the one to fill that space for you. You deserve more than that. The words hung in the air between us. The silence that followed felt heavy, oppressive. Like the kind of silence that stretches too long, where the weight of what was just said presses down, and you can't move, can't speak. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I swore I saw the walls around her crumble just slightly. She was hurt, and I could feel it. I could feel the crack in her heart, and I knew that my words had made it worse. She looked at me with those big, sad eyes, and for a moment, I felt like I was breaking her heart. I wanted to pull her into my arms, to tell her it was all going to be okay. To give her the comfort she so clearly needed. But I held back. I had to. I understand, she whispered, her voice trembling, barely above a breath. I didn't expect you to fix everything. I just wanted to feel wanted again. Her words hit me like a blow to the chest. The honesty, the vulnerability in her voice, it tore through me. I could see it now. I could see the pain she was hiding behind her quiet strength. She wasn't just asking for company. She wasn't just asking for someone to listen. Emma wanted something more, she wanted to feel desired. Wanted to feel alive again, in a way that she hadn't felt in months. She wanted to be seen as more than just Noah's mom, more than just a woman caught in the mundane rhythm of daily life. She wanted to be acknowledged. She wanted to know that someone still saw her as valuable, as attractive, as desirable. And it hit me like a flood. This wasn't about me comforting her as a friend. This wasn't about me being there for her as Noah's friend, or as someone who simply cared. This was about a deeper desire, something raw and primal. Emma wasn't just seeking solace. She was seeking validation. And that's where things became murky. Could I be the one to offer that? Was it possible for me to comfort her without crossing a line that should never be crossed? Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to tell her that I understood, that I cared, that she wasn't alone. But I also knew that my words couldn't fix what was broken inside her. I couldn't be the person she needed me to be. I watched her closely. She didn't cry, she was holding it together. Her tears buried deep down. But I could see it in her eyes, in the way her shoulders slumped as she spoke. Emma wasn't just a woman in pain. She was a woman who had been starved for affection. For connection, for someone who saw her as more than a mother, more than a caretaker. She had been carrying this burden for so long, and now, the weight of it was finally spilling out. The silence between us thickened. Neither of us spoke. We both sat there, in the quiet of her living room, feeling the weight of what had been said, but unsure of what came next. I could see the quiet desperation in her eyes, the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could fill that void for her, even if just for a moment. But I had to be firm. This wasn't my place. I wasn't the person she needed to find solace in, and I couldn't allow myself to be the one to replace the emptiness she was feeling with something that wasn't real. I opened my mouth to speak. To offer something, anything, that would make this moment less excruciating, but no words came. How could I offer her something so simple when the situation was so complex? How could I offer her comfort without crossing a line that should never be blurred? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I found my voice again. Emma, I began, my voice softer this time. I care about you, I really do. But this isn't something I can give you. You deserve to be loved, to be desired in a way that I can't offer. She stared at me, and for a split second, I thought I saw something break in her eyes, something soft and vulnerable, like the last shred of hope she had held on to just crumbled away. She nodded slowly, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "I know," she whispered. I don't know what else to do. I don't know where to turn." I could feel the weight of her words pressing against my chest. She didn't want pity. She didn't want sympathy. She just wanted someone to see her, to really see her. And in that moment, I realized how much she had been denying herself. How much she had been trying to hold it all together when, deep down, she was falling apart. I didn't know what to say. I could feel my heart breaking for her. But I also knew that I couldn't be the one to fix her. I couldn't let myself become entangled in a situation that was already so complicated. I had to let her go. And I had to let myself go, too. I left Emma's house that evening with a sense of relief mixed with sadness. The feeling was so much more complicated than I expected. Relief, yes, because I had set boundaries. Had stayed firm in the face of something that could have escalated into something I wasn't ready for. But sadness, too, because no matter how right my decision was, it didn't make it any easier. The weight of the moment lingered like a storm cloud, still hanging overhead, threatening to pour at any moment. The tension between us had dissipated in a way. But it didn't feel like everything had been resolved. The air between us still felt thick with unspoken words and emotions left unaddressed. We both knew something had shifted. But neither of us was willing, or perhaps able, to put it into words. As I drove home that night, the city lights flickering by in a blur, my mind kept returning to Emma's face. To her quiet vulnerability. Her words, "I just wanted to feel wanted again," echoed in my ears. I wasn't sure if I had done the right thing, but I knew I couldn't have done anything else. Yet, a part of me felt like I had let her down. She was hurting, and I had closed the door. She had sought comfort, and I had given her distance. I had done the responsible thing, the adult thing. But at what cost? The next few days were nothing short of awkward. We still communicated, but it felt different now. It wasn't just the normal rhythm we had when Noah was around, where everything was casual and easy. I helped her out with little tasks around the house, things Noah would normally do if he were home, but every movement seemed carefully calculated. It felt like I was walking on eggshells, always trying to gauge where the line was between being a friend and crossing into a dangerous territory. Every time I helped her with something, whether it was moving furniture or fixing something around the house, I could feel the underlying tension. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't something she said, or anything that was outright stated. But it was there, in the way she looked at me sometimes, or the way she would pause just a little too long before speaking. I could sense that Emma was still processing everything that had happened between us. She was still lonely, but now, she understood that her feelings couldn't be projected onto me. It seemed like she had started to see the reality of what I had said, but I knew she wasn't ready to let go of what she had hoped for. For my part, I was trying to do the right thing, even if it was uncomfortable. I reminded myself daily that I had made the right decision. Setting boundaries was important. As much as I cared for Emma, as much as I wanted to be there for her, I knew that I wasn't the person she needed. I wasn't the one who could fill the emptiness that Noah's absence had left in her life. I had to respect that. But respecting that didn't mean it was easy. I still saw her, still spent time with her, but there was this invisible line that had been drawn between us, and I wasn't sure how to navigate it. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more we hadn't dealt with, something beneath the surface that neither of us was brave enough to confront. It wasn't just about the photo anymore, or even about the moments of vulnerability she had shown. It was about the deeper, more complicated emotions that neither of us was equipped to manage. She needed something that I couldn't give her. And I needed something too, a clarity, a sense of direction. Could we go back to being just friends, or had we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Looking back now, after everything that had happened, I realized something important. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't acting on your feelings, it's knowing when to walk away. And even harder than that was recognizing that walking away didn't mean I didn't care. It didn't mean I was abandoning her. It just meant that I was choosing to do what was right, even when my heart felt differently. Because, in the end, sometimes the most important thing you can do is make the hard choices, the choices that keep you true to yourself. Even if it costs you something along the way. I realized that I had stepped into Emma's life, her emotions, with the best of intentions. But I wasn't the hero of this story. I wasn't the knight in shining armor who could swoop in and fix everything. I wasn't meant to be the one who healed her heart. And that, more than anything, was the hardest part of all. Letting go of the desire to be everything for someone else, especially someone you care about deeply. To step back and let them find their own way, even if it hurts. I spent the next few days in a haze of self-reflection. As I helped Emma out around the house, I would find myself lost in thought, wondering if I had made the right choice. I couldn't help but feel guilty sometimes, as if I was being too harsh, too distant. But at the same time, I knew deep down that I couldn't let myself fall into something more. Not when it would only complicate things. Not when Emma needed something far greater than I could offer. One night, after another quiet exchange with her, I found myself thinking about what I wanted for my own future. I wasn't just involved in this situation as a friend. I was also a person with needs, desires, and boundaries of my own. It had taken me a while to understand that. At first, I was so focused on Emma's pain that I neglected my own. But I couldn't ignore my own needs any longer. I had to make sure that I didn't lose myself in this situation. The truth was, I couldn't afford to put my life on hold, or let myself become an emotional crutch for Emma. No matter how badly she needed it. I had my own path to follow. I needed to stay true to my boundaries, to my sense of self, even if it meant walking away from something that could have been so easy. In the end, I realized that while making the right decision was important, it didn't make things any easier. The emotional weight of what had happened between Emma and me would always linger. It was just one of those moments in life when you had to choose between doing what was right and letting your heart take control. And, even if it hurt, I knew I had made the right call. What do you think about the story? Do you agree with the choices the character made, or would you have acted differently? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So don't hesitate to leave a comment below with your reflections or feedback. And if you enjoyed the story, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me bring even more captivating stories to you. Thanks for sticking with me until the end of the story. And stay tuned for the next adventure.